Hi everybody, welcome to our chat and vibe session here for the Vitality Festival. Today I am happy to be interviewing Mark Surdut. Hi Mark, how are you today?
Hi, great. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I'd like to start with the question of asking you, how did you become you? Tell us a little bit about who you are and your background.
Thanks. I'm a dietitian. I'm an accredited practicing dietitian, I think is the official title. And I've been doing this for about 25 years. I qualified in a place far, far away called Africa, as you can tell from my accent. I trained in Cape Town, beautiful part of South Africa, and I didn't know I was going to do dietetics. I actually started studying something else. I was doing human physiology. I was fascinated by the way body works. Didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with that information. So I started physiology. Towards the end of my physiology, I'll never forget this, towards the end of my training, towards the end of the degree, we had a guest lecturer. I guess like I'm a guest lecturer, there was a guest lecturer that came in, and she was already an older woman to me at the time anyway, and she was running a postgraduate dietetics course at the same university, and she gave an introduction to nutrition. And I remember sitting there and thinking, this is amazing. I know so little about this. I think at that time I didn't even know what a protein was. But I really appreciate the subject, and I almost found myself falling in love with it. Right, this is during one session, and so I applied. I had an interview. I remember the head of department saying to me that one of the reasons I'm taking you onto the course is because I appreciate your community work. So I was an AMBO. I was an ambulance man back then. I was a reservist. I'm involved, as you know, I'm involved as a first responder. I'm involved with ambulance and emergency services today in Melbourne still. And I was an AMBO then. And they loved the idea, I think, of some community service. And I remember her word. She said, "That's your brownie point. That's how you get in." And then it was me and 11 women, Tanya, myself and 11 women for 2 years.
Great.
Stuck in a room. It was great. and I came out of it as a dietitian. But I often feel most of what I've learned through experience. I've learned since my training. It was wonderful training, but so much of what I've picked up from experience. Yeah.
Amazing.
That's the long answer.
Incredible. Thank you. And tell me, what drew you to participate in the Vitality Festival that's starting on the 31st of October?
Right. Well, that's a no-brainer for me, because not only am I passionate about teaching and talking about nutrition, but as a medical first responder in Melbourne, I know firsthand how stressful the last few months have been. It's been really complex. The work has taken on a lot of the work has taken on another dimension, and so I thought to myself, what an amazing opportunity to talk about nutrition, and particularly to be addressing a group of frontline workers. And I guess it's another little way of giving back, but I also feel that I've got that common bond. So it's made to be kind of almost a special opportunity and a special way of relating as a nutritionist to a group of people that I feel I've got something in common with, being a frontline worker myself.
Yeah, that's incredible that you're on both sides of the story in terms of the festival. And tell us, for people who don't know so much, even with you being a first responder, what other extra stresses are around since COVID has set in?
Well, I mean, it's affected me personally. I run a nutrition practice. I'm a practicing dietitian, a small private practice, and for a number of months, I haven't been able to practice from my normal location. I love chatting to people and I love interacting with people, and to have that taken away as a dietitian, I'm passionate. You'll see my hands, or maybe you won't, they're below the screen. You see my hands moving around. It's the way I kind of speak. So to have that taken away was obviously a big adjustment. It wasn't taken away straight away, of course. You remember taking you and everyone back 6-7 months. I've lost touch. In the beginning, it wasn't that I couldn't go and work. I started getting nervous. I started feeling, I realized there was a threat. We started becoming more and more informed about it. We were picking up new pieces of information every single day. And I was going into a practice and dealing with people face to face. I started becoming myself a little bit nervous, and then I decided to make it safer, not just for myself but for my patients as well, and moved online. And I've embraced it. And it's interesting what comes from a situation that seemed to be very, very tricky has, in my case, become an opportunity. I often think to myself, why did I not think of opening up my services, of helping people online? Why did I always think someone needed to get in a car and drive from maybe one part of Melbourne to another part of Melbourne? And so it's what COVID's done for me, among other things, is it's actually made me aware of an opportunity that I could tap into. We're doing it now, right? We're communicating over Zoom, and in fact, I discovered that I can achieve a lot.
Yeah.
Working remote without actually being with someone face to face. And the truth is, I look forward to going back and being able to do both. I still want to interact with people face to face. There's nothing like it. It's so important. And I look forward to being able to do that. But maybe I'll mix it up with continuing to do what I'm doing now, working and study.
So that's fabulous, because you've been able to take something which was a real sort of roadblock for you, and then seeing the opportunity and really growing into that space, which I think a lot of people have been really challenged and pressed to do as a result of this time, especially first responders, all the, teachers, nurses, the frontline people in general. I think everybody's really finding that the way that they used to live has been restricted and challenged. So it's great to see the growth opportunity. So great. Yeah. I wanted to ask you, tell me, you were saying that a lot of people particularly are feeling stressed and fearful at the moment. And I think that's really pretty universal at the moment for everybody around the globe who's affected in one way or another by the pandemic. Tell me, does those feelings translate to gut health?
Great question, because the answer is yes. And, one of the areas I work in is irritable bowel. And I've always known, I'm sure you've known as well, that there's this very powerful link between the symptoms of IBS or irritable bowel and one's state of stress or distress at the time. There's this really powerful connection, axis between the two. And we can all relate to this. If people aren't sure about what I'm talking about, if you take yourself back to school days, I don't know about you, but I remember the morning of a big exam, all of a sudden, it's like, what's going on with my gut? I can't get out of the toilet. Yeah. Am I going to be able to get into this hall and write an exam? Why did it have to happen today? And the answer is that, of course, we know that stress can manifest in the gut. And the way I manage it, and I think it should be managed from a number of angles, but my angle is, of course, through nutrition. Fortunately, we have a lot of success. There's quite a lot you can change about how your gut feels by addressing what you put into it. And a lot of this has changed or become known to us only in the last 10 to 15 years. Certainly when I qualified, which was in the previous century, I didn't have the tools that I've now got at my disposal to address someone's diet and resolve or reduce what can often be quite debilitating gut symptoms. And that's amazing that we're able to do that. But we have to remember that it's multifactorial. There's so many things that affect gut and gut health, and nutrition is one that I think is significant. But of course, stress and other lifestyle habits and how we live in other ways is so important too.
I know I've often heard people talk about the gut being the second brain. So there's obviously that relationship that whatever's going on up here in your head is affecting the gut, but vice versa. So by influencing either end of that sort of that, you can either influence the head and then the gut, or the other way around.
No doubt, no doubt. And people often say to me, when their gut becomes, when some of their symptoms start to resolve, those tangible symptoms, like pain or bloating, whatever the case is, it's amazing how people tell me that they feel better. Not always, but often in other ways.
Wow,
just a
fantastic.
general sense of wellness that goes with it. So you're right, the two are connected, and they can certainly affect each other. Yeah.
Fantastic. And tell me, at the Vitality Festival, your topic that you'll be speaking about is nutrition and resilience. Tell us a little bit about what people who are attending your workshop can expect to sort of find out.
Right. I think people will get some insight into my approach. I'll tell you what my approach is, and give you some insight into what we're gonna look at. I tend to take a very pragmatic, very practical approach with nutrition, and I like to follow that KISS approach, keep it simple. It's very, very much part of what I do, I think, because that's why I'd like to be treated.
Yeah.
If someone's addressing an issue that I've got, I'd appreciate it so much if they take a nice, simple, pragmatic approach. So that's what I'm going to be doing, and I'm going to be coming up with nutrition is a massive, massive subject, as we all know, and it's often overwhelming, even to a dietitian, nutritionist. It can be overwhelming at times. There's so much information. How do you know what information to draw out? How do you know what applies to you, and that's the role of a dietitian. The role of a dietitian is to help filter all of that nutrition information and try and make it relevant to an individual and facilitate a change that they're trying to facilitate. Now, I'm talking to a group. Hopefully we're going to have a really large group, and it's difficult to individualize it. So what have I done? I gave it a bit of time, I thought about it, and I came up with what I think are some of the key principles that most, if not all, people can relate to. And so what we're going to be addressing is we're going to be addressing some of those key nutrition principles, and with some take-home strategies. So I'm not just going to mention an idea. I'm going to make sure that people have a real take-home strategy in order to be able to address that particular idea or key. And I'm going to come up with only a small number of keys. So these are things that I feel are very, very important and have a lot to do with our resilience, with our body's ability to cope on a day-to-day basis.
Fantastic. That sounds great. So just to finish up with, tell us what would be your top 3 tips in terms of nutrition for our viewers today?
I don't want to steal too much from my talk, but I'm happy to share. I'm happy to share 2 or 3, and I won't tell you whether they do or they don't. I'll keep everyone in suspense. Whether they do or whether they don't relate to the presentation workshop on the day. But let me tell you what comes to mind is really important. A couple of things I've learned over the years. When we're thinking about nutrition, what do we think of? We often think of food, right? But in fact, there's something that comes before food, and that's hydration. And it's one of the things that as humans, we are so poor at managing. Even people that have a good diet often have poor hydration. Good nutrition, poor hydration. And hydration is very, very important. And I'll discuss it a little bit more at the workshop and explain to people why it's so important. Number one. Number two is, I guess, any talk that doesn't mention the importance of plant matter and vegetables is of course missing something very, very critical. And so we're going to talk about vegetables, and I'm going to explain to people why at the workshop. And I'm going to talk about quantities as well. People often understand they need to have vegetable matter in their diet, but many people don't actually understand what's considered a good amount. Like, how much do you actually, how much should you have? How important is variety? So we can address that in a little bit more detail, but I want to highlight that vegetable matter and plant matter is so important. We don't want to forget about protein. Protein is critical when it comes to immune resilience. Yeah, I started my career, I won't tell you a long story, I'll just tell you a very short story, but I started my career working in an area of malnutrition, which is unheard of in Australia, but in South Africa and in Africa, it's well known, called kwashiorkor. It's a form of protein malnutrition. And essentially, kids that don't get in any protein or adequate protein, what happens? They succumb to infection. So I discovered very early on in my career the important connection between protein and immune resilience. At a real basic level, your body's ability to fight an infection has a lot to do with protein. So we'll talk a little bit more about protein at the workshop as well. And there are so many other critical points. I'm glad you mentioned or said 2 or 3, because I don't want to spill the beans. There's so many other critical things, but those are 3 ideas that come up, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to address those 3 among a few others.
Thank you so much today for your time, Mark. Really happy to have you along, and really excited that Mark is going to be joining us at the Vitality Festival starting on the 31st of October and running for 9 days. We've got 70 amazing leaders who will be speaking about health and well-being. Everybody's donating their time, so the festival is free. It's all about giving back to the frontliners, to support them and to encourage them and inspire them. We'd love everybody who's listening or watching this today to be a part of it. If you haven't signed up yet, the link is below. You can find us on www.vitavibeevents.com. We'd love to see you there. Thank you again, Mark. I can't wait to listen to your talk at the Vitality Festival. Thank you.